Hey everyone, welcome back to Cali Plants. It's me again, Mark, and today we have a shipment of succulents to wrap up to send to our buyers. So I have my table prepared there. So I'm just gonna get the plants from the greenhouse, but as we're doing that, as we're doing the wrapping up, I thought that it would be nice to talk about the quality of succulents. Does it matter if our succulents are high quality, if they are much more expensive than others? And the quality, does it matter really when the succulents arrive? And if we care for them, will it make a difference on the quality of succulents that we're buying? So that's the topic that we're gonna be discussing today in this video. But first, let's go to the greenhouse and let's go take the succulents that our buyers bought from us. Okay, so there's our greenhouse. This is the view outside our house, and this is our fountain that I haven't fully deconstructed, and these are all our outdoor succulents. Okay, quick look, just a quick look, because that's not our topic for today. Okay, I really like this one. Really like the new growth on our tomentosa panda plant. Really fuzzy. It's gotten much more fuzzier than last time. Okay, so here we are, the greenhouse. A lot of my succulents are dry. It's been raining, so I wasn't able to water them properly. Okay, and one of our buyers recently asked to have their plants shipped with pots. Okay, and that's gonna be a challenge, but I think that it could be done. Okay, so let me just take it. I think this is the one. This is the other one. I haven't watered it since because I was gonna ship it. Okay, if you're my buyer and you're gonna be receiving these plants, I would recommend you just water them because they're potted. Okay, and they've been dry for about a week because when I posted them, I haven't watered them since, so they're gonna be very dry. So yeah, but they're not dying. This one, okay, you can see this one is really dry, and I'm really sad that its pot broke off, but you still have the potting mix. So if you are the buyer, then you can just replace the pot, use the same potting mix. Okay, and this one as well. Okay, there's that. This is actually the place that I am establishing, acclimating my plants. Yeah, you can see here, these are all still acclimating plants. I haven't watered them since you're potting them. So this is the place because this is where I usually stay. So I will be noticing them more if they're here rather than if they were over there. Okay, so yeah, these are my new propagates that we will be preparing for our next selling of plants. So I will be selling them later. And these are also our other still succulents for sale, this tray. Okay, if you want to buy more from Cali Plants, you can message me. I don't think I can ship this with pots because they're in plastic pots, so they will have to be, you know, removed from here because these pots wouldn't do well in a box. They will be squished. Okay, so now we're here, and these are the plants that I will be shipping. So this is only one of the two batches that I will be sending out. This other batch will also be sent out, but this one will be sent uprooted. Okay, and we have those that will be shipped with pots. Now I was looking around the house and I was actually trying to look for the chopsticks that we have here, but since that is, I think that is already lost, I found some straws, and I think that we can use this so that they will not be squished inside the box. Okay, but for first, I think that we have to remove these from these pots. These are already dry, and then we're gonna be wrapping them up in tissue. By the way, I have some other plants here at the sides that I will be sending out as cuttings. They will be given out as freebies to our buyers. So these are just small cuttings. They will not be rooted still, so I hope that you are able to root them up, but I hope that they will add some variety to your plant purchase. Okay, now if you're already in the Philippines and you've been buying succulents for a while, then you would know, wow, this one has a lot of roots. Then you would know that there are actually very different sellers here in the Philippines. There are some that sells imported succulents, and then there are some that sells succulents that are locally grown or locally propagated, like in the highlands. Now, succulents from overseas will naturally be much more pricier, but also you will find varieties that you will not find from the lowlands or from the highlands here in the Philippines. You will not find these weird Korean varieties if you're just buying from locally produced succulents, because locally produced succulents will usually be mass produced. A lot of growers will already have them, so you will have the benefit of a choice if you're buying from overseas sellers. Now, regarding the quality, will there be a difference in quality if you're buying from overseas compared to if you're buying in the Philippines? And what I will say about that, about the quality is, yes, there is a difference, because succulents usually are grown in the overseas as stressed succulents, stressed plants. So you can see here, I'm just removing the dried out leaves off of this blue surprise. So usually from overseas, they will be stressing these plants because they have much higher temperatures there compared to in the Philippines. And what you would usually notice about these stressed succulents is that they will be thicker, the leaves will be thicker, and sometimes because the succulents there are older, so their stems will also be thicker. So you will find these small compact succulents with really thick stems. So that's what you would often find with Korean succulents or Korean sellers. And because of that, some Korean sellers will actually sell small succulents that are very compact, and yet they are very old already. They're not very young succulents compared to local propagators who will propagate the succulents which are often very big, but they will still be young. They haven't grown a lot, their stems will be much more smaller, and their leaves will already be very big because they were actually grown in a perfect climate, in a perfect situation there in the highlands, that they already grow very large even though they are still very young. I will probably leave some of the roots at the bottom there because, yeah, it will help the succulent establish much more quicker if they have some roots at the bottom. Okay, so these roots, even though they are dry, they will still be able to absorb water once you water them. So you just make sure that after 1 week of planting, you start watering, the plant will just plump back up. Okay, you don't have to cut the roots every time you plant your succulents, but you can do. That's a personal preference, but me personally, I don't like to remove all the roots. But sometimes I'm still able to establish succulents without roots. They will just take some more time. Now, what I would say is the benefit of that your Korean sellers are able to make their plants stressed and make them old, grow them very old before they ship them. The benefit of that is that succulents will be able to travel much further distances in much more longer time in the shipping. They can tolerate much more longer times while in the box because they're already mature enough, they're already very old, and also because their leaves are very thick. So what that usually means is that the succulent can tolerate longer times of drought. So even if they're not potted for a very long time, they will be still very healthy because they were stressed. So as you know, as I said before, stress usually involves letting a succulent dry for long periods of time so that they will be stressed, their leaves will contain much more water, and they can also tolerate much more periods of drought. So they will stay alive even if they're left dry for very long, and that is the benefit with Korean succulents because they stay in the box for a longer time compared to if you're shipping them locally here in the Philippines. So because of that, Korean succulents will still be beautiful even if you wait for a very long time before they will arrive. So that is because they were stressed wherever they came from, and they have thicker leaves, and yes, they were already old enough. So that is the benefit of them. Now with Korean propagators, I will not say that all Korean propagators are selling low quality succulents or very young succulents. Some actually are selling much more older succulents than others, but usually you would find it much more often with sellers that they will be selling succulents that are still young. It will be there will be a higher chance or a higher percentage of highland sellers that will be selling younger succulents than others. So if that is the case, those who sell those smaller, younger succulents, they will be priced much more cheaper. So that is the benefit because they are still young. They will be much more cheaper. They will sometimes be large in size, but sometimes they will also come in small sizes since they are very young, and that is the benefit when it comes to selling much more expensive varieties because they will be sold for much more cheaper prices because they are sold as younger succulents. They're not that very old, so they will be sold for much more cheaper. If you let a succulent grow much more older, you will spend a lot more time to that, growing it, a lot more effort, a lot more potting mix, watering, so a lot more effort. Because of that effort, the price of the succulent will naturally increase if a succulent is much more older. So with that said, a lot of Bengal propagators will sell smaller succulents Now, some of you might be doubting about that, or some of you might think that, oh, the Korean plants are much better because they're older. But that is not always the case, okay? Because here in the Philippines, we have shorter distances for these succulents to travel through. So because of those short distances, some succulents will be able to still survive and will still be alive if they arrive to you, even if they are not that stress grown, even if they are not that mature, because they will only need to travel shorter distances. So me personally, I have a lot of experience with buying from local sellers because most of my succulents are local, and I only bought a few Korean succulents here and there, but most of them have been bought locally. So I have a lot of experience. So I would say with confidence that local succulents can still survive and can still thrive, can still grow. So they are not the worst of succulents ever. So now it will actually be just on the preference of the buyer if they will like this overseas or local succulents. But preferably, if you are a beginner, I would find that it would be better if you just find a reliable seller. So sometimes sellers will be new, there will be new sellers popping up all the time on Facebook. And me, I have some experience of buying from new sellers, but I would recommend that you go with the sellers that are much more reliable. They will sell much more higher quality succulent. So I will say that is true with the Succulent Palace and Ma'am Joanne's CNS succulents, and also I think it was Camille's Cactulents. So I think they're one of the older sellers of succulents. So with those sellers, they know how to grow their succulents, that they will have plenty of success when it comes to shipping and when it comes to acclimating on their buyer sides, because they're receiving feedback with their buyers, so they know how to care for their succulents so that they will survive shipping. So those older sellers will actually have much more experience growing better succulents and shipping them much more better. They will also be better when it comes to air drying their succulents. So that is what I would say. The difference of the quality of the succulents really depends on the quality of the sellers that will be selling them. So in those cases, if you're probably buying or if you're collecting some new varieties or some unique varieties, you would actually be better if you buy them from much more trusted, reliable sellers. So if you're actually doubting the quality of succulents, or if that is something of a worry to you, then I would recommend that you go with much more reliable sellers. If not, then you can also try buying from Korean sellers, because they will already be fully grown. They will already be mature and older and much more stressed out succulents, and they will have a much higher percentage of surviving in your care. Now, when it comes to the quality of the succulents though, I will also just say, when it comes to these Korean sellers, they will sometimes buy Korean succulents and then they will stock it for a much more longer time before they will be able to sell them, because some people doesn't like these plants, or there's something that's changed when it comes to their orders, so they will not be able to ship out these plants. They will not be bought. They will be stuck in a store, probably under grow lights, and probably they will also deteriorate in their looks. So if you're gonna be buying those stocked Korean succulents, they will not be as beautiful compared to when they were first bought here in the Philippines, when they were first shipped to the Philippines. So they will already be deteriorating in their looks and in their quality. So I would say that those succulents that were etiolating in their warehouses, in their wherever they store their old succulents, their old stock, so those succulents, I will probably say that they won't look as good as your other succulents, but sometimes they're doable with. But if they're gonna be pricing them as expensive as their new succulents, I would not recommend that you go with them, because they will not be worth their price, because they will not be as beautiful compared to when they were newly bought. So I would actually recommend that you buy from these pre-orders, because once the succulents arrive, they will be actually shipped to you right away, compared to those plants that were already in stock and they're still sold as Korean succulents, but they're already in stock for very long. So those ones I would not recommend. I don't think that they're already that of a good quality. But if you're still if you're saving money, if you want to have quality succulents, then I would just recommend that you go with local, reliable sellers. So that is, again, Ma'am Joanne, CNS, and the Succulent Palace. And also, you can check on the groups to find these really reliable succulents. Now, if you're something of a risk taker like I am, and you have much more confidence with your acclimating skills that the quality of the succulent will not be a problem with you, then I will recommend you can also try these new sellers that sell these much more expensive varieties in much cheaper prices because they are still young succulents. So if you're also a risk taker like me, you can also try those local sellers. So now we have managed to successfully unpot these succulents. Okay, so you might be thinking, oh, he just unpotted them now, so they will probably deteriorate in shipping. No, I don't think that they will, because they're very dry, they're not very moist at all, so I don't think that there's a problem with them in shipping. Now other sellers, I don't know why, but some other sellers will be shipping the succulents that have already deteriorated, or they will be rotting when they arrive to you. So that is actually probably a problem with the plant itself. Probably it doesn't do well in shipping, or probably on the side of the sellers, because in the highlands we don't know what kind of climate that they will have there. Actually, Benguet has a lot of different locations. Okay, our image quality is getting bad. So in the highlands there are actually a lot of different locations, so sometimes it will be raining around there, so if they ship their plants it might take some risk. Sometimes the plants will be a little bit moist when it was sent in shipping, so it will be rotting when it arrives. So that is actually a truth that we can't avoid. But if you want to avoid that, you can go with just Korean sellers, because in Korea usually it doesn't rain and they will have much more higher success rates. And usually the benefit with these Korean sellers is that if the plant arrives in a bad condition, they will give their customers the option to back out on the plant, and they will just refund you the money because the plant is not good in condition. So you have that guarantee if you're buying from a reliable Korean succulents. But with local sellers, you will usually not find that. You will not have that guarantee, because local sellers usually will be just, they will not be as rich as Korean sellers. So sometimes they will be able to replace the succulent that you bought from them, but most of the times these local sellers, don't expect them to refund your money, and don't demand them for a refund if you receive a bad plant. Okay, because they're just they're not the richest of people, these local sellers, so they will still be cutting their costs. So yeah, I don't think that it's a nice idea to demand a refund on these local sellers, especially since they are selling these very small succulents and they're very young. So you should know the risk before you buy these succulents, these small size succulents. So if you have a problem with the plant, then you should have already known about the risk before you took the plant. That is what I would say. Now when it comes to my plants, okay, if you're gonna buy from Kale Plants, I am a local seller. I am not a Korean seller, and all of my succulents, or most of my succulents, are not Korean bought. But what you can think of me probably is I will have some quality probably in my plants, because they're grown not in the highlands but in a much more hotter climate compared to theirs. So it's not as cold in my climate compared to the highlands. So if your succulent has been grown in a much more lowland situation, they will most probably be much more acclimated to the lowland conditions that you have. So for example, if you're in the Philippines or if you're in Manila, then it will be much better actually to buy succulents around Manila that have been growing there, because those succulents already know the temperature. So from the highlands to Manila, that is actually a lot of difference in temperature. So your succulents may take longer to acclimate if you're doing that transition from the highlands to Manila. But if you're doing in my place, probably in Dingalan, Aurora, we have a much more warmer temperature compared to the highlands, so they will probably acclimate much better if you buy them from me. But also I'm still stressing out my succulents. So my succulents are not farmed in a way that other succulents are farmed, because other succulents, what I said before, with these large grown succulents that are still young but they're already large, they will usually be treated as farm plants. They will not be treated as house plants. So me, I personally treat my succulents as house plants. They are not farm plants. So they're actually much more, I'm much more considerate when it comes to watering my succulents. I don't do batch watering, because other sellers will do that. They will batch water their succulents. So these succulents are grown in a much more stressed condition than others because I don't do batch watering, and I also give them full sun, and I don't baby them too much. So some other succulents, you will find that these etiolated succulents, that probably means that they were grown in a very mild condition. So they will probably be, it will probably be harder for them to acclimate to a very hot condition because they were grown in a cold condition. So me, because I give my succulents full sun, I let them burn. So if you buy from me, then probably they will have a higher chances of acclimating much more quickly. But really, it depends upon you. There's a lot of factors regarding to the quality of the plants. So it's not just about the seller, it's not just about the location it was in, but also with the care that you give your succulents. So of course, you will still have to know how to care for succulents properly so that they will stay good in quality as long as they stay in your care, so that they will retain their quality or their health as long as they're with you. Because sometimes I also sometimes find these local growers that they have a lot of money. They're able to buy Korean succulents, but the Korean plants that they buy don't stay good in quality for a very long time. So because they're still new, they still don't know how to care for their plants. So even if they are Korean bought, the quality deteriorates very quickly. They don't stay beautiful for very long. So that is no longer the problem with the shipper or with the seller. That is already a problem with the grower itself. So he might not be able, or she might not be able to have a very bright location for their succulents. She is not putting her succulents in a bright location. So that will be on the buyer itself. So it's your responsibility to actually know how to care for a succulent the right way so that they will stay good in condition. It doesn't matter how good the quality of your plant is when you buy them, or how much money you put into buying new succulents. It doesn't matter if you don't know how to care for your succulents on your own. So really, the quality of a succulent really depends upon you, your preference, and the skills that you have. So if you're not yet confident with the skills you have, go with the much more expensive ones. But if you're already experienced, and if you want to take some risk, or if you know how to care for a succulent that is young and how to make it grow very quickly, then go with the much more cheaper ones. So it really depends upon you. And yes, a succulent quality matters. Okay, it really matters. It really matters for some, and for others it doesn't matter that much. Okay, so I don't know why our camera quality is not stable. Okay, so the importance of that really depends upon you as a grower. Okay, so now I'm only 2 plants down, but I've already talked so much. So I think I'm just gonna make a time lapse of me wrapping up these succulents, because I think I will talk too much if I keep on talking. By the way, if you're looking at the plants that I'm wrapping up here, you can see that I'm using reused tissue because I already saved a lot of these. I was actually able to save a lot of this tissue because I have been receiving plants recently, so I'm able to reuse them. That's what you can do if you're also a seller. So with these potted ones, I think I will be using a tissue again to wrap up their potting mix first, their pots, before I wrap the plant, because the pot will have their potting mix, rolling around, tumbling around. So we want to avoid the potting mix getting onto the plant itself. Okay, so I will just put the tissue here and then I will wrap it like that. Okay, let's see. Now this is actually very difficult to do. I think this is the first time that I will be trying out this packing method, so I hope that the plant doesn't get squished while it is in transit. So let's do that with the other succulents that we have here. Okay, so after a lot of wind and after my battery has died, so my battery, I'm already low on battery, so here are the boxes that we have shipped, that we will be shipping, so that we have packaged. Okay, so this one is our plants. Okay, so I was able to fit them together there. If some leaves are squished, then really apologies for those leaves that have squished, but I know that the succulents inside will just survive it. Okay, the other one, this is the non-potted succulents, but I have a Mirine here that I place inside the pot so that it won't be squished. But these other ones are snug here. There are some freebies. Okay, there's also a freebies on those in that other box. Okay, so I will be wrapping this up in tape, and then I will be shipping them. So I think that's about it for this boxing video for our not unboxing but our wrapping up succulents and boxing them video. I will be shipping them out soon. So for the buyers of these plants, I hope that you receive them well, and I hope that you're able to grow them and give them as much love as I gave them. And if you really enjoyed the information that I also shared, the tips when it comes to the quality of succulents, please make sure to hit the thumbs up. It really help support the channel, and please subscribe if you haven't already. And I think that's about it for this video, guys. I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.